6:23 our time Tuesday evening that he wants to be president again. He has filed all the necessary paperwork to make another run for the White House, and now voters will have to decide if he is the right person to take on the corrupt forces he spoke about, or if there are corrupt forces at work in Washington right now that need to be rooted out at all. Joining me now live to talk about it all are Republican strategist Tab Berg and McKenna Jenkins with the FemDems. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Tab, the whole country, the whole world knew this was coming, but how did it land when you finally heard the words?
Well, it was a little bit like, somebody proposing at someone else's wedding. I think a lot of people really hoped that this would wait until after the elections are all set. I thought he was much more restrained than people expected. He didn't really go into attacks with his competitors and really focused on the litany of failures of the Biden administration.
McKenna, how did it land for you?
Yeah, we were quite surprised, but also weren't at the same regard. The voters had expressly rejected Trump in the last presidential election for a good reason. And we suspect that 2024 isn't going to be any different than that.
Leading up to Tuesday's announcement, leaders of the Republican Party said if Donald Trump declared for another run for the presidency, the party would not continue to pay for some of his legal defense on some of the many matters that have been filed against him. When it comes to those matters, like in Georgia, where he's accused of trying to strong-arm the Secretary of State into manufacturing votes for him that didn't exist, is this run maybe just convenient cover because now he can say, my critics are only still pursuing these things because they want to keep me from being your president? McKenna, what do you think about that?
The reality is that since the fall of Roe, voters, especially women voters, have turned out to the polls to help restore reproductive rights that were taken by his Supreme Court picks. Women showed up in this election. Trump wants to give a lot of credit for a lot of different things, but the one thing that we will give him credit for is that he really reinvigorated the women's movement, and he sparked a modern day revolution of voters who said enough is enough. Our rights matter, and women are going to prove that in 2024.
So, Tab, what do you think about this? He's got a lot of legal wrangling that's going on surrounding his businesses, surrounding him and the last election. Declaring this early, declaring it all, is that convenient cover to say, look here and not there?
Well, and he has $100 million in his PAC, so I don't think money is really the motivation in terms of who pays for what. And I would kind of, maybe think we need to focus a little bit on facts and data as opposed to hyperbole. The reality is in this last election cycle, the share of the women's vote actually went down from 2018 to 2022. So I'm not sure how big of a motivation that was. And I think we need to be a little bit more careful when we characterize the Supreme Court as a purely partisan body, because it's not. It's actually the highest legal authority in the land, and we need to kind of respect their decisions.
In his speech, former President Trump applauded California Assemblyman Kevin Kiley, now U.S. Representative Kevin Kiley, maybe is the reason the GOP will regain control of the House. Kiley was one of the few Trump-backed candidates being counted as winning their races. Some feel there's been a pulling away from the former president as being a staunch 2020 election denier and a Trump loyalist. Didn't work out so well for several candidates. Tab, is any effort for the GOP to redefine itself as something other than Trump, Trump, Trump possible? Is there room for a DeSantis run?
No, I mean, clearly the polls show that there's plenty of room. And I think this early on in the process, it's too early to determine really who the Democrat or the Republican nominee is going to be. I think everyone's going to be probably somewhat surprised when we end up with an actual ballot with names on it.
McKenna, what's your feeling about how the GOP is defining itself right now? Is it locked into Trump, Trump, Trump now that we've had this declaration?
No, absolutely not. Faith in Trump's leadership has been lost. And Americans, both Democrats and Republicans, they both recognize that. I don't believe that this is going to be the comeback story that MAGA supporters are really hoping for. And really, this past midterm election is a clear indicator of the rejection of Trumpism by voters. The reality is that America is incredibly diverse, multicultural, and becoming more decentralized than ever. And the Republican Party needs to recognize that America is changing and that these different coalitions that are forming within the party, Trump isn't necessarily welcome there anymore.
Whereas the country won't have Speaker Pelosi anymore, as soon as it looked like the House would turn red, many here in the Golden State said, well, at least the Speaker will still be from California, with Kevin McCarthy thought to be a lock for that position. Now it seems there's, some significant pushback to that idea. He did clear one secret ballot yesterday, but may not have the votes for the next vote on the House floor. The Freedom Caucus saying maybe there needs to be a new leadership focus, a new direction. McKenna, what do you think that says about that party?
Republican-backed candidates did not fare well this last election cycle, and Kevin McCarthy's proven to be a pretty ineffective minority leader, as evidence of this lack of a red wave. The Republican Party is facing an identity crisis, and that while McCarthy might be nominated for Speaker within his own ranks, his ability to earn that role doesn't look so promising.
Tab, what are you thinking about the questions that seem to be surrounding McCarthy and the direction?
Oh, I think the reality is McCarthy is going to be the next Speaker of the Assembly, and you got to kind of separate hyperbole from actual results. And certainly there was no big red wave, but Republicans held every Republican seat in California, including the 4 they won in 2022. They're very close to winning 2 additional seats and turning over 3 Assembly seats in California. So I think there'll be some wrangling behind the scenes, and there might be some shifting in the sub-level leadership roles, but Kevin McCarthy will be the Speaker starting in 2023.
All righty, and with the 2024 race getting started this way so very early, of course, there's going to be a lot to talk about as we talk about our next president. So Tab Berg and McKenna Jenkins, thank you so much for joining me this morning to get that conversation started.